toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls, who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance.
Loved ones, the times we find ourselves in compel us to bring forward the very best in ourselves. I think of my parents who in the 1940s both independently enlisted in the military for the duration of World War II to confront a powerful evil force, the Nazis. 85 million people died in the world during World War II. Today we're faced with the COVID-19 pandemic, complicated by the economic fears and difficulties, and now the necessity to examine our country's racism, long-standing racism, any one of which of these things would be a lot, but all three of them, there's something that needs to be emerging. It is definitely a time of change, and a powerful message is going out to us. And we can use the deep feelings that we have in the midst of all of this to not only come forward to do what it is needed as a part of society, but also to be our very best incarnate spiritual beings. Let our fervent desire be the fuel for deep transformation. Perhaps now we are willing to fully enlist in this great battle of our time. I'm glad that we can do this together. We're going to be speaking more about the, go ahead, please.
So sometimes people on a spiritual path may wonder, especially in times like these, am I being selfish, just working on my development? I should be out doing things. I should be active in the external world. And we all have things we're called to do. And sometimes, especially those of us who are more vulnerable to COVID-19 are not able to get out in the ways that we used to. However, it's very important for us to remember and realize that the work that we do in spirituality, which initially seems to be for our own growth and development and awakening, but at some point we realized that that was an illusion. We were actually awakening our ability to connect with the deeply interconnected reality that we're each an integral and unique part of. And as we're going to be exploring tonight and more in the remaining classes, what we do in this process of awakening is in actuality not just a nice thought in our mind, bringing about a transformation in the very world that we live in, and can have a very powerful effect on transformation, much more so than we could ever do from our individual separated vantage point. So I did a series of classes previously that perhaps some of you participated in called Spiritual Awakening as Service to the World, and it is a service to the world.
So in this service, there are tools that we have. In this training, there will be different ways of looking at some of the things that you have been doing already, as well as adding some new things. We're going to speak about the imagination tonight, and we're going to speak about what's called the barzakh, or the imaginal realm, also called Herkalia. Much of the teaching is coming from the Surewardian tradition, which, if you remember our initiation, that was one of the groups, one of the inheritances that we have. It's from Surewardi, so Shahabadin Surewardi, and others like Ibn Arabi and Ahmad Asai that looked toward the Zoroastrians during that time but didn't only just take the studies of the Zoroastrians, but then transformed it and worked it into the Sufi tradition, so that now it is a part of, well, what Hazrat Inayat Khan learned as he was coming up. And then Pir Vilayat had a lot to do with introducing some of us to Henri Corbin. And he, as I said last time, was an Islamicist who studied these and also translated many of these ancient Sufis. Pir Vilayat used to call them the Sufis in about the 1000s or 1100s, who a characteristic of theirs is they're called Ishraqis. They're the ones of illumination, and he was called, Suroardi was called the philosopher of illumination, that looked beyond appearances of things in the material world to the light beyond that, and taught us some things about being able to strengthen ourselves in different ways, including the imagination that we're working with tonight, and also that there is another world that we don't usually think about, and way of perceiving between the intellect and the physical body and the senses, and that is the imaginal realm. So we're going to talk some about that tonight. Excuse me. So first thing is, imagination must be trained. All of us as spiritual aspirants have been training our imagination for years, many of us. We don't usually think of it as imagination, but it's the ability to imagine or to hold an image. We could also say holding the words of our practice, a wazifa, is also using the imagination. In other words, mediating also between our thought and our actions, or maybe our reciting of the wazifa. But when we say a wazifa, we don't just make the sound of it. We're thinking, we are imagining different kinds of perhaps qualities, maybe beings that we have known, perhaps situations in which we would develop a quality. Let's say the quality is mastery. So we're thinking about these situations that really draw out the possibilities then of what could change in me as a result of making the sound of which does have effect also. But what happens to us is we get into a deeper kind of imagination. There are two different ones that I like to mention. One of the types of imagination is the passive nature. That could be like even animals that see things and then remember the images afterwards. But we're looking at a more active nature that produces meditative thinking, visionary events that are true perceptions of reality in imaginal worlds. So we notice that the perception of this other world depends on a very special use when it becomes what we call real imagination or true imagination. At this point, it acts in a transformative kind of way, because now it is dependent upon aligning with all the material of the intellect, so that we are using whatever is arising in a way that is harmonious. And we notice around us, how harmonious was that when I was using this wazifa? Is there something that is happening in my world that I could use another sound, and I go to my teacher and I find another wazifa, and it actually helps align parts of ourselves with each other and also with parts of the universe. This is some of the use of this imagination that I think Azarbash was referring to in talking about that we can make a difference in the world itself, in the amount of harmonizing and the amount of piercing through to new possibilities that we can do, and more than anything, changing our own being in the process. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so when that alignment takes place, and we talked last week about this ancient term ta'wil, which means harmonic perception. It also means perceiving the deeper reality behind the surface appearance of something. And initially we tend to think of that as, well, here we are, we're separated from what we're experiencing. Now we're somehow we're on a Zoom call, but we're kind of zooming in to the essential nature of what we're experiencing, but we're separated in that process. That's how we often tend to think about it. But in actuality, in order to come in this relationship of harmonic perception, we have to awaken to an aspect of our being that exists at the same level as that deeper reality. So we're actually in a transformed world that's not up there somewhere, although it may seem like, well, it's in a higher place, it's in a different place. It's no place but here is so much more than what we normally think of it as. And one more thought about this is that this proper use of imagination that Ravani Ross is talking about, the true imagination, is the essential tool or ingredient that enables the alchemical process to take place, not just as a linear sequence of alchemical events we talked about in the Nayatiya, our order, for some of us, sequence of 6 different stages of the alchemical process, but this alchemical process is ongoing all the time at many different levels. And what's the fruit of that? And we'll be getting into this in later classes. The fruit of that is wisdom that arises, that can only come by our participation in this process.
So in the Zoroastrian tradition, I'd like to get back a little bit back into the elements of this philosophy. There are so many different angels we could speak about, and we will speak of some. However, I've tried to reel this in so it's not a study of, I actually spent about 30 years looking into all of this, so you might want to get some things out of this 6-week class rather than go into such depth. But an essential part of it is that, as I mentioned last week, I believe that if you were a youngster in the Zoroastrian tradition at 15 years old, you would be asked to, or you would be allowed to come in to have an initiation, and would be told that you were a son or a daughter of the archangel of the earth, Sventa Almighty, and that your task then as that son or daughter was to exemplify the inner being of this angel. That would mean that you would use, they called it actually Spentarmitic, based on the name of this, of Spentarmighty. You would keep up the thought of perfect wisdom and a calming and transformative thought. It was the perfect thought, they would say. And this perfect thought, I think you can think about it in our tradition also. What would be that perfect thought? In a way, you find as they use this, it becomes not only being kind and really thinking of all the qualities that could burst from this perfect thought, but also the thought that not only creates the world and brings things into existence, but also what Azarbash just said, ta'wil, also takes it back so that you look in from the creation, from the created things, back to what is hidden behind all of these things, and all of the levels of the realms burst out in that kind of thought. And there's an incredible resonance of what the light that they called Svarna in that time, an intensification of light that comes through as you have this perfect thought. So the other aspect of this thought is that not only are you as a manifest being, it was said that you had a choice at the beginning of time, and you chose to be incarnated into life. So you have become a manifest being, but at the same time a divine being. You also have a partner on the other side in the celestial realms that sometimes we have some consciousness of, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes things happen to us and we say, well, maybe that's my angel. Well, yes, it is. It is a relationship that is for forever, and that you know deep in your soul about this. I know one of you spoke to me during this week saying, oh, I have a twin. I knew I had a twin. Now you're telling me, yes, I had this twin. And it is that there it is, a celestial being with a very different kind of consciousness than we have, but that is very functional in a certain kind of way. So we're going to go through a meditation right now that you can use in future also. But let's close our eyes and imagine first that an aspect or the face of God that you recognize as your own angel is before you. Feel the pull of love within you like a magnet between the two of you that aligns your being. That recognition from way long ago and from even now in the midst of your life. Feel that you're unifying your being with this heavenly love, and you accept some things that you have in your life. You're allowing these to be released and given to this angel that is on the celestial side of life. Some scars, some experiences, some treasures, some learning, some magic. You're feeling these releasing from your light to the light of the angel. Some treasures feeding back to the angel. Your angel's taking these new impressions to her or him and allows a rearranging or a synthesizing, really moving towards an essence that is returned to this celestial being. And this works only because the heavenly self is a part of us, and really from where we grow and change. So we let go of what we need to let go of. And if your soul keeps back nothing, then this entire manifestation is fed. It's a kind of feeding process. And as you feed, then the process is reversed. And the flowing toward the angel becomes the flowing towards the being in manifestation, the manifest angel. You're feeling this returning light, light upon light. Just experience this for a moment. So all the light is reflected one way and then back the other way. A special process emerges as the light shines on the light. Now, taking it a little bit further, we can turn our attention on ourselves and work the substance of our being that is being open to this angel. We usually see a reflection like a screen, passively receiving an image. But what if we work with the surface of the screen, allowing it to acquire depth, to thicken, and many of the points we think of on the inside of us, we see now are part of this screen, this multi-dimensional screen, enabling a special focus of all that you've ever learned to focus together. A deeper sharing with our angel. You might use your breath to breathe out and breathe in. You feel this rotation, this circulation of light. And notice how you have been able to use your imagination, this mediating facility, to change your relationship with your angel, to begin something that will keep unfolding for you. And you might want to, as we finished here, take a look at your angel, think about futures when you can get together again. Perhaps feel some gratitude for this deep experience. And let's open our eyes.
So in the beginnings of our spiritual journey, and perhaps for quite some time, we think it's a process for us as an individual separated, and we have a feeling that we're bringing something down from a higher level into us or through us. But in actuality, we can't have any experience unless it's something that exists in relationship between how we perceive ourselves and what it is that we're perceiving. And that applies to everything in manifestation, but it applies every bit as much to our relationship with this angel that Ravani Ra took us through a meditation about. Even Arbi talks about our personal Lord. There's different terms for the same idea. Our Rab, it's our unique way of connecting with the transcendent. And we can't have a living relationship with that deeper aspect of who we are and what everything else is unless we open up that relationship and free ourselves from the usual basis of perception of the physical senses. And that's another reason why it's very important to learn and train this tool of the imagination that is not operating from the way we usually think of it as our mind, like, okay, I'm going to think about an apple. An apple is red and it has this shape. I'm going to cook up an apple in my mind. That's a very, I guess, a basic aspect of imagination, but we're talking about something much richer. And when we can awaken this relationship, then we actually experience a world that it seems like we're inside of, but we are actually that whole world. The ancient Sufis, some of them say that each of us is a whole universe with its own laws of physics and so on. And in this process of relationship and in this connection with however we think about it, the angel or our personal Lord and so on, something arises from that circulation of light that Ravani Ra was talking about. It's a twofold circulation, only we don't have words to properly describe it in English because it's not just like up and then down and up. and down. It's constantly, every part is being affected by and is affecting every other part. And when we participate consciously in this process, then we enable something to be born that could only come through this relationship of the two sides, that helps to unfold the reason why there's a manifestation to begin with. God being the hidden treasure, desiring to be known, to love, and be loved. Well, each of us is a miniature of that same process that enables that to take place. And in this beautiful meditation, Ravani Ra took us through this mirroring that takes place. We can think of that when we're able to have this connection with whatever it is that we're experiencing, everything is reflecting our divine face, and we are reflecting the divine face of whatever it is that we are experiencing. And in the light that transpires between those two reflections of unique aspects of the divine face, something is born that was never there before and could never have been except for that. And so there's no end to the fulfillment. Even Arvi says there's similarity in events, like things have a continuity, but there's never the sameness. It's never identical.
Beautiful. And as you're speaking about it, you know, we really know, in at least in intellective way, that we are all part of the same thing. We are united with everything that there is. But in a process where we're doing a mirroring kind of thing, it's bringing into our consciousness this, what is between, you know, what is between the, and really the workable area between the everything else and what we perceive as ourself. And so it gives us a way to begin to work. I'm beginning to, the things that Azarbash was just speaking about, this transformation of everything. We have to have a place to start. And so a mirroring kind of idea is a very good one. It's kind of like what Pirzia brought into the retreat that some of us were just on, in speaking about marriages, bringing together two parts. You know, here's a meeting kind of thing. Here's a coming together, and it's like they are separate, but they are interworking. And as that is happening, we're beginning to receive what Azarbash again was saying, the whatever was coming from the other side, not all from our side, as we are entering into this process, a deep process. I'd like to offer too that we have a meditation like this, and at that point then we do allow this auto-reflection, you might say, and merging of the beings, and loving, feeling that love relationship. But then we go out in the world and we forget, right? And we forget, and we might do other practices and still forgetting to allow that light to circulate. And what happens then is that that light, this varna, the light of creation within us, then dims, and dims some more, and dims some more. Just like I've heard before, that the only sin that there is to forget God, to forget our relationship with God. Well, it's not only our sin, but it's also the dimming of the light of our being. And the intensification of light comes when we are realizing that this is the place of the manifestation. There's a word in Arabic, mazahir, or more mazar, they say, that means this is the privileged place of epiphany. Always, it is the place of epiphany, right here. And to be manifesting, to be realizing that, is our dharma. It is our opportunity, and it is bringing in more light into this creation. And so this is a little practice that really can become a very large practice. Feeling that sun of the divine shining upon us all the time. And the other part, we don't do as well sometimes, is feeling the light of our own being, that uniqueness that the divine is craving so much from us, that we allow that to go back to the other side of the mirror. Here it is. This is me. I am trying, and I am doing better, and I'm working. Feeling that we're really working the process and including that being into the deepest part of ourself. And then we are intensifying that light of existence as we do this.
There's a beautiful principle in the mystical Judaism, the Kabbalah, where they talk about the bread of shame. And what does this mean? It means that once a person has become capable of awakening to this capacity of bringing forth the light that's transformed through their being and returning that to the source that further contributes to this ongoing alchemical process, someone who is capable of doing that but tries to keep all the light for themselves, that's called partaking of the bread of shame. So we don't want to do that. And another thought is our path that Hazrat Inayat Khan brought of Sufism is the purpose is awakening in life. Well, we can unpack those few words, and there's a real depth of understanding that can come from that. So first aspect is, well, who and what is awakening? We might think as well, this is me. I've gone on my journey. I've gone through these different stages, perhaps level of initiations, experiences, and so on. Here I am. I'm this separated being awakening in life. But actually, Hazrat Khan describes us, the true nature of the human being. We are human divine beings. We incorporate, and even Arvi talks all the time about we're beings of bi-unity, that the human side and the divine side, and he says something very profound, neither of those sides can even exist or has any meaning without the other. And even more profound, he says each side creates the other. And so it's our human divine being that is awakening in life. And what's the life that we're awakening in? We might think, well, it's awakening just in our normal day-to-day perception of the world as it is. No, we are awakening to the true nature of the world that we've always been in, but we've been living in a, you could say almost a holographic, Ravani Rao was talking about dimming down the light, very low resolution slice of what that reality really is about. So we're awakening to a much richer life, and that's where that unfoldment ultimately takes place.
Great. Okay, so let's think about our spiritual accomplishments that maybe are times of initiation. We've been on a retreat, we've come through a difficult time, and we really feel the light in a different way. And then later on, speaking of fading, these situations seem to fade. It was a hall experience. Sometimes we talk about a hall, meaning a temporary experience of a higher realization, and then we go back down to the maqam, which was a little lower, quite a bit lower than before we took our retreat. So where do these go? Where do these high times or these beautiful realizations, or how about even memories or accomplishments in our life? Some of us think about, some of us are teachers, for example, and think of the students that we had, and did we ever do anything to, help them, illuminate them, besides learning some ways to do things? Well, there actually is a place that keeps all of these, that keeps and holds really all that you have done and all that you are. And not only that, but it is a place where all of the practices are really done. And it is a place where, let's see, what else do I have here? Excuse me. A place of all visions and spiritual events, the mirage of Muhammad. So in our usual consciousness, we have no room for them. Maybe we have a journal, we write some things down. But so where is this place? Well, this place is called a barzakh by the Sufis. And I'm not sure the exact interpretation of that. I think it's interval. And it's thought of actually, if you know the different realms, as part of the malakut, where the images are kept of all the things that are in all of the worlds. Another way of talking, other traditions of a place where everything is kept, of all the different realizations.
Even in science, the description, it's called various names. One is the 0-point field, another is the quantum vacuum, but it is a place where everything is connected with everything else. And everything arises from this. It's a place that is no place. There's a Sufi term, nakochabad, which means literally that, the place that is no place, but it has the same meaning in quantum physics. It's not a location anywhere in the universe. It's like that which underlies and enables the possibility of there being existence. And even as the Sufis talk about a new creation born at every instant, the physicists talk about time not being continuous, space not being continuous, and the same kind of idea, like everything pops into existence at every single instant. So there's different terminology both in scientific systems and mystical systems. In the Kabbalah, if you're familiar with the Sephiroth and the Tree of Life, the different branches of the tree, and those depict different states of consciousness and different states of relationship with the human being and God. And there's actually a different name for God in each Sephiroth. And Judaism certainly doesn't think there's 7 names of God or however many Sephiroth there are, but it's the capacity or the capability of the kind of relationship that can take place when a human has evolved to a certain state of being. It's a different degree of relationship. So that there's many ways of trying to parcel out, just like the color spectrum. You know, we have our red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, but there's millions of colors, and they could have been chopped up in a lot of different ways. So Sufis talk sometimes about 7 planes and 14 planes and so on. And it really doesn't matter. The key point is there's different degrees of capacity of relationship between that which is manifest in us and that which is transcendent to us. And there always has to be a gap between the two sides, because without that, there couldn't be any possibility of relationship.
And then that gap, or that barzakh, that interval between the two, that is where we work. That is where we can make the alchemical process all takes place in that place. So when we say, well, we're going to fana something, or we're going to detach or let that part of ourselves go in order to open up to a new place, that kind of working is done in that place. All of creation happens in that place. And why are we speaking about this? Well, because this is something that often, that even in our consciousness in the West, there hasn't been a place that is discussed really like that. And so back to thinking about all that we have done and been and all, it is not usually tangible anymore. It is lost. You feel that it's lost. And so in this tradition that we're going to be speaking about, I guess another 4 more weeks, and hopefully you'll study more, you will be able to gain a tangible feeling of where this place is. We're going to speak also of it being the place of resurrection, to get back to our title here, and where the development of the resurrection body comes from. But I'm going to share a more personal situation that at about 30 years ago, our dear son Dave, who was 13 years old, died of heart malformation. We knew nothing about it before that, and it was a very difficult time for us, except that we had meditated for a long time by then, and we had a lot of inner experiences of him, even when the body was gone. But I had a real need after he was gone to find out, first of all, where is he? Because I really didn't understand. Is he in God now, or does he have a different? Does he still have a consciousness and a sense of humor? And is he still my guy? And I needed to know those, and I especially wanted to give him a hug. I wanted to know if he had an actual. Is it possible to hug somebody if you don't have a body anymore? And really, all this philosophy and this cosmology really taught me, yes, there is a bodiness outside of what we think of as our material bodies. In fact, it is just as possible to be, when these bodies are gone, we'll still be able to hug. We're not doing much hugging these days. We'll be able to. There is a bodiness to the existence even after we have these material bodies pass away. And I learned, and I'm very sure of that now. And I've had hugs from my son. So, so all it's said that in this place, your experiences, your sensory experiences, are 70 times stronger than what you perceive in the material world. And kind of like what you're saying, Azarbash, it's like everything, the colors, everything is, well, why? Because that is where we really live. In this realm of the barzakh, the imaginal realm. And what we're experiencing most of the time is kind of poor black and white of what our souls are really experiencing. And there is such a beauty. Let me read this. When you learn that in the treatises of the ancient sages that there exists a world provided with dimensions and extension, do not rush to call it a lie, for pilgrims of the spirit may contemplate that world and find there all that is the object of their desire. It is a place of connection to the connection to the divine in a personal way, and where you become the beloved of God. It is a place where you can awaken processes that reveal the hidden, heal physical and emotional realities, consciously participate in the creation of your resurrection body, develop a feeling of deep satisfaction by locating the place where dreams actually do come true. And it's not over the rainbow. We're talking about a place, but now, is it a place? This is the question that Azarbash actually and I had been speaking about for a while. You can't talk about it as a place. It's really a state of consciousness. I bet you want to say some more about that.
And I think of it, you could say it's a state, although state sounds static, it's a state of beingness. It's a enablement of relationship that is very living and dynamic and incredibly richer than our normal, usual experience walking around the world with the limitations of the physical senses. And Hazrat Khan talks about there's no desire that is not ultimately fulfilled, and he says either in this lifetime or beyond. So because language is limited, it's hard not to use terms like a place, like it's a location. And even when we think about subtle levels of existence, we usually call them higher realms. And we think of them kind of like stacked up on top of each other. And they're not. I say this many, many times, it's no place but here, but it's because it's subtler that our ordinary senses are not able to perceive them. Just like we think we have an accurate perception of physical reality, but we can't see infrared or ultraviolet. We can't hear subsonic sounds like elephants can hear. We don't have capacities of perception like sharks have that can detect electromagnetic fields from a distance. We don't have the capacity of birds to navigate by the stars and the magnetism of the earth. So we're so human-centric and think that, well, this is all there is. And in actuality, even the physical world that we're in is so much richer, and our capacities for experiencing what's right here and measurable by scientific instruments is hugely more than what our perception enables us to experience it.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
So we've been doing much more walking outside. I don't know if you have been, but we have a lovely wetlands area around here that we can walk in, and very few people are even there. So we don't even have to wear masks. But what I want to say is that being in nature, and I know many of you experience this very deeply, it brings out something that you just don't usually have. You are connected with nature. You are going into the growing buds that are opening. Somehow you can look into those and somehow reach in, like, where does that come from? And it's just teaching you so beautifully about this kind of realm that we have a capacity to enter into. And why are we speaking about this so much? It is because it is really a bodiness. It is something that is tangible and real, in a different kind of real. This might not be the senses that tell you that this is real. And scientists might have a hard time, although some of the physicists are understanding for sure. But if we, what I'm suggesting here is to begin to identify this place when you are sensing it, or this consciousness when you're sensing it. It's almost like put a tag on that. Okay, here it is. Oh, here it is again, and here it is again. And as you do that more, it accumulates a magnetism, and it begins to pull, intensify light. This is Varna we were talking about, which created all of existence, and begins to really help your spiritual growth phenomenally. Because now you are knowing that this is the place from which you are, the place of no place. That is, Pierre Belliot used to say, if it's easy to say, don't say it, but if it's difficult to say it, try. So we're doing our best. But that is, so I'd like to give a challenge to my husband here that I'd like us to do a practice, perhaps just a wazifa, but thinking from the point of view that we are in that place. And that what we are doing, each time we say it, is intensifying this feeling of this place.
Okay, and before I do that, just a comment about the idea of awakening in life. Perhaps we can consider what's happening as we are awakening to life. We're awakening to the life that we truly are, and the life that we live in, and the life that relates to us, the life that reflects to us, the life that we emanate light to and receive light from. And if we pick up just even a trickle of that, that serves as a catalyst. It opens up something. And I know all of us have probably had an experience where there was just something that perhaps seemed like a little trigger, and all of a sudden everything seemed different. Maybe time seemed like it stood still for a while, and your vision seemed so much clearer, and you felt like you had understanding that was beyond the level of words. So I'll take Ravani Ra up on her challenge of working with a practice like this. And since I just mentioned the idea of awakening to life, we're going to do the wazifa Hayy, Hayy, which means the divine life. But as we do it, let's in the background consider that what's happening here is when we're invoking this, when we're saying it, when we're experiencing the vibration of this, initially we're awakening to that real life that is always there in us, always has been, and is always emerging, is always bursting through. And we're also enabling a birth of life to take place, not only on the level of manifestation, but a birth of life to take place on the level of the divine being. These marriages that Ravani Rao mentioned, that Pir Zia, those of us that went to the alchemical retreat, talked about, each of those marriages represents an awakening to a connection of a level of beingness that was dormant before. And when that happens, something opens up, and after that marriage takes place, it no longer seems like two separate pieces. It's just us. It's a fuller aspect of ourselves. So each time we say this practice, Hayy, let's feel like the life that we are, the life that that is, the life of the divine, the life of ourselves in relationship to the divine, all of that is emerging ever more fully each time we do it. So one advantage to everyone being muted, because if we weren't, if we all tried to say it together and we could hear each other, it'd just be a lot of different things at different times. But because you're muted, you can say it at the same time that I say it, and really feel it. We're going to do it slowly and just really feel what's happening with this. You think it's you consciously saying this word that's coming out of your mouth, but actually feel like it's just life emerging, and you're sharing in this process of life emerging. Hayy. 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 And now it's called the fikr, which means doing the practice silently on the breath, and we don't think of the ya, just Hayy. Think on the in-breath Hayy, that you're breathing in this life that emanates from everything, every level of existence. And as you exhale, think Hayy, and you're sharing the way that life has been transformed through your being and the light that comes from that, that's offered as a gift to all of existence. So high on the in-breath, high on the out-breath at your own rate. And then what's called the fikr asir, the secret of the practice, letting go of even the thought of the word and just feeling what you're experiencing. And we can close with a variation on a Buddhist prayer with the thought of life. Let us encompass the world, and may that life, increasing without measure, bringing healing, inspiration, renewal, comfort, compassion, understanding, peace, and hope encompass the whole universe up to its confines. Amen.
Amen.